Let's start off with this DeepSeek news. Does it change as we go into earnings for these three companies, Meta, Microsoft, and Tesla? Does it change any of the narrative of them for your?
It'll probably.
We had a little technical difficulties, but why don't you go?
Yeah, so it'll probably somehow be good for Tesla. Everything seems to be good for Tesla. The reality, I think, though, is that it's going to depend on the storytelling. These companies are lucky, probably, that the DeepSeek news really hit a frenzy over the weekend, and that some of that is already priced in. So they've had time to kind of workshop those narratives and say, hey, here's what it means for us. In general, if you're a Meta, it's actually probably good because you get to say, look, guys, we're not going to have to spend quite as much as you might fear over time on AI, and we can get back to dividends faster, right? And so I think that for some of those names, it's good. I think for the Teslas of the world, it's sort of irrelevant, but I'm sure that they will spin it in a way where everything's coming up Elon, because that tends to be what they do. And so I think it's going to be a case by case basis. You know, there's a reason I think that we saw NVIDIA, rightly or wrongly, sort of bear the brunt of the DeepSeek news.
All right. We also got some news this morning from Alibaba that they have a new model out. Is this something that we just need to get used to, the idea that tech companies, specifically tech companies in China, are going to roll out these models, and that it could be disruptive to the narratives of some of the companies that we've been investing in and seeing move the market higher? How do you just view this development just on the heels of DeepSeek just a few days ago?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, a lot of the Chinese tech companies have a lot of involvement from their governments, which can, kind of impact when they announce things like this. That being said, anybody who thought that China somehow wasn't working on AI, wasn't paying attention to the chip war, right? And anybody who thought that they weren't going to come out with some great AI models themselves, I think hasn't been paying attention to history and their technological prowess. So if this disturbs your narrative, I think you were maybe listening to the wrong narrative to begin with. This isn't shocking. It's basically, I would say, about on schedule.
All right. In all fairness, Brad Gerstner from Altimeter Capital, he basically said nothing's really changed when it comes to this narrative either. So he agrees with you as well. I want to get back to the companies reporting earnings today, specifically Microsoft and Meta. They came out with their capex guidance. For Microsoft, it's $80 billion. For Meta, it's $65 billion. Is that good now? Is that not as good now that we know that some of these models can be created with less money, and maybe you don't need as much power, you don't need as much time, you don't need as many data centers?
Data centers are going to find uses. You're probably seeing a lot about kind of the Jevons law popping around on the internet right now. The reality is that in general, when something becomes more efficient, we spend more of it. Remember how we barely used to touch our cell phones when it was like 10 cents a minute to talk? And then now most of us have unlimited and, unlimited data, and we cannot be pried away. So the reality is that as compute gets cheaper, as it's cheaper and cheaper to be able to actually invest in and use AI, you're going to see sort of more applications of it probably faster. And so I don't think that Microsoft or Meta is going to get dinged this quarter for that spend, but I do think that people are going to be questioning what does that look like 3 quarters from now, 2 years from now, because a lot of the narrative, particularly out of OpenAI, has been you will have to keep spending all the money forever, right? I think at 1.7 trillion was a number that was being floated, and that's not really accurate. But I think the smart money always knew that wasn't accurate.
By the way, Sarah, I had Sprint. I think the minutes were free after 7, so I did use my phone just for clarity. I want to get to Tesla very quickly. I was just actually talking to an auto executive yesterday saying that Tesla's been actually losing market share in the U.S. To GM, to other car makers in both luxury and also in more reasonably priced models. If that actually comes out to play out when it comes to Tesla, does that, in your mind, does that change your view of the company? Like, isn't there still a lot of debate about whether Tesla's an AI company or an auto company? If the numbers in the auto business are declining, what does that say about the overall business?
Tesla's an Elon company. If you take any sane metric and multiply it by 10 or probably even 100 in terms of what automakers are valued at, you get nowhere near Tesla's value. And that's been true for a really long time. Tesla is a bet on Elon. That is an increasingly sketchy bet because he's spreading his time thinner and thinner. But that is really what I look at Tesla in the market as. Do they have some AI? Sure. But he's putting a lot of his AI efforts, such as they are, into XAI and not into Tesla. And so if you're buying Tesla based on an AI story, I don't quite understand that trade. And yeah, the amount of cars being sold is going down. We're not seeing some great new hero car, either super, super high priced with great margins or really, really affordable. So I think Tesla's Tesla.